welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame Live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave, where Philly loves a winner. We hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. We're very thankful to be with you here tonight. I'm Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds alongside my co-host Adam Caplan. With us tonight, the usual suspects. We have our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell.
Jeff.
And fresh in from Ohio Stadium, the voice, the sideline voice of the Michigan Wolverines, the soon-to-be Big Ten champion Michigan Wolverines, is former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant. You have about 2.2 seconds to gloat, and we're moving on.
Go blue.
All right, we're moving on.
Purdue.
Oh, yeah, that's...
We're good enough to beat Georgia this year, though.
Good. Well, we'll see if they're good enough to beat Georgia. Yeah. We'll see if the Eagles are good enough to beat the Packers tonight.
I'm smoking.
I know all these turkeys are stuffed and ready to talk some football. Eagles come home for yet another prime time showdown. They have a game against the Packers tonight against a certain quarterback that they know very well. We'll get into him. The Eagles are 9-1 after beating the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis 17-16 last Sunday. They entered this week with a 2-game lead in the division. Of course, we know Dallas beat the Giants on Thanksgiving. Now the Packers are not what they used to be. They are 4-7 after losing 27-17 to the Titans last Thursday. So they come in with a little bit of rest. They also come in with a quarterback named Aaron Rodgers, who has done quite well against the Eagles in his career, especially here, 3-0 at the Link, including a 2010 wild card victory over the Eagles en route to Aaron Rodgers' first Super Bowl win. Jason Avant was there for it. He's shaking his head now. We might or might not relive that moment a little bit later in the show. I'm going to take it easy on Jason at the moment. All right, there's still plenty of time to come down. Let me tell you guys, Rivers is rocking tonight. There are so many people here taking advantage of the food and drink specials here at Jack's Bar and Grill, the gigantic flat screen TVs. They're placing their bets. They're using the leather seats. And a little bit earlier, when Justin Tucker of the Ravens lined up to kick the 67-yard field goal and the ball's in the air, you heard this coming from the sports book.
Well, it was straight on. It was straight on.
Straight on.
Yeah.
But that chant I heard told me two things. One, there's a lot of people in here tonight. Two, some people lost money on that kick. Some people won money.
Someone had the Jags
on
the money line. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. Still plenty of time to come on over. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment, a question. We'll try to get to it. Of course, you can leave your score prediction in the chat box. And listen, this is a very big game for the Eagles, the Packers tonight. So let's get ready. As always, we like to take a big picture look at the game as we go into it. And Jason, I want to start with you. The Eagles have scored 38 points in their past 2 games. My quick math tells me that's 19 points a game, way down from their.
Did you check that with your
I
calculator?
did, everything. Well, abacus, it's all worked out. So do you feel like the Eagles need to get their offensive mojo back? Do you feel like they're lacking something over the last 2 weeks?
The Eagles' offense is not because defenses are stopping them. I've heard that a bunch on the radio this week. Defenses are figuring them out. And that just doesn't show up on tape. The Eagles are penalized a bunch in critical situations. They had the ball 4 times in the Colts' territory with no points.
Okay.
And that's because they were knocked out of field goal range because of penalties. Also, the errant snap by Jason Kelce, fumbles, those types of things. So yes, it would be good for the Eagles not to make mistakes offensively, especially in scoring situations. Protect the football. 6 turnovers in 2 games. You can't have great offense that way.
If I might be cliche, it sounds like you're saying they're shooting themselves in the foot too much.
Exactly. It's not because of the opposing defensive coordinator. It's not because of anything else but the lack of focus that the Eagles offense has showed these last 2 weeks.
All right, well, we're going to get into that in this show about why they're not having the same amount of offensive focus. Greg, I want to ask you about Aaron Rodgers, because you may have heard on radio this week that Aaron Rodgers isn't having a very good year, or he's regressing as a quarterback. You watch more tape than anybody. Is Aaron Rodgers any less of a quarterback this year because they're 4-7, or is it just simply the surrounding cast and the moving parts?
Well, he's missed throws that you normally see him make.
Okay.
That's for sure. I would say that there have been times this year, and he's gone through this, by the way, throughout his career, where he's turned down throws. and only he could tell you why. I don't know if that's a confidence thing. I mean, he's been very outspoken about the receivers. Of course, he chose not to show up in the offseason, so that would have been a good time probably to work with the receivers and develop a little bit of a rapport with the receivers. But hey, that's just me talking, you know.
Sure.
Right. But he's clearly turned down some throws this year that you would normally expect him to make, and he's missed some throws. It's crazy to say that a team with Aaron Rodgers, that the best version of their offense is when they're running the ball effectively.
Yes, very much so.
So, you know, we'll get into that more as we get into the next couple of hours, but that's really where they are now. Now, having said that, can he still make unbelievable throws? Of course. But, you know, you can go back a couple of weeks when they came from behind by 2 touchdowns in the second half to beat the Cowboys, and Jones and Dillon combined for 37 rushes for 203 yards. And Rodgers really, even though he threw 3 touchdowns, there were only 23 called passes in that game. So as I said, the best version of their offense in recent weeks has been when they've been running the football effectively.
Right. Of course, Aaron Rodgers is nursing an injury, and we'll talk about that when we get to the injury parts. Adam, I want to move on to the Eagles and personnel or staff standpoint. The Eagles did something very interesting this week that we were sort of alluding to on a different guy last week. They brought in a former Colts coach, but it wasn't Frank Reich.
Yeah.
It was Marcus Brady, their fired offensive coordinator. Explain what that decision entails and what to expect out of his addition.
Yeah, so this is fascinating. They brought in another coach. Vic Fangio, as you know, has been helping Jonathan Gannon periodically throughout the season. They're bringing in Marcus Brady not to help the offense, but to help the defense. According to our friend Tim McManus, you know Tim very well.
From ESPN.
So what they're going to do is Brady's going to actually help Jonathan Gannon break down tape, figure out what is the offense trying to do to his defense. You know, the defense has been pretty good, but we know what the run defense have been doing, not so well. But now and we'll get into that. Linval Joseph and Sewell added last week. So I find this interesting. And again, this is a guy, Brady, who knows Sirianni because they worked together with the Colts. Marcus was the quarterback's coach then. And now he's here consulting. So this is pretty interesting. The Eagles never spare any expense. When they're trying to win a ring, making big trades, big signings, and bringing in experienced coaches.
How do you think Jonathan Gannon would feel about that? There's already the presence of Vic Fangio, and now they've essentially taken, and someone Jonathan knows from Indianapolis, but yet another coach or another mind.
Well, I would think this is his idea, but I just find it interesting that you would just think Fangio would be enough.
Yeah.
Why another person?
Well, didn't we kind of talk about that in 2000 and I don't want to say 20 when they hired Marty Morningweg and Andrew Briner and Rich Gangarello, and it seemed like, and Jason, you can comment on this, a lot of great minds there, and because you were part of the coaching staff, right? It seemed like, I know people said, hey, the more the merrier minds, but then all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, we're saying, well, maybe there's too many chefs in the broth here, you know?
It's when you get into that situation, you just got to have a pecking order. And that can't be compromised.
Right.
You can't have so many cooks that everyone feels like their voice is supreme.
Sure.
There has to be a pecking order, and you have to have a personality type that's willing to concede.
Right.
As long as that's reiterated by upper management and by the head coach that Jonathan Gannon is the central voice, these things can work. But when there's no direction on who has the loudest voice, there can become problems that way.
There's always a natural skepticism, and Craig, since you talk to a lot of NFL people, I want to ask you about this. I think lately there's been a natural skepticism when you have an offensive guy doing something or a defensive guy doing something on the opposite side. Here we saw Juan Castillo go from offensive line coach to defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia is in control, I guess, or doing something very, very prominently with the Patriots offense. This is a consulting. Hey, it's called a plays. This is a little different, though, right?
Here's how I would answer that, and this I know for a fact.
Okay.
This is just official. This happens all the time unofficially around the league.
Right.
A ton of former coaches who are not officially working for a team talk to coaches all the time.
Yeah.
This happens all the time. I can tell you that for a fact.
That's why I asked you.
So the Eagles made it official, and that's fine. But this is not abnormal, nor is it strange. And I think Jay's point is 100% correct. I guarantee Jonathan Gannon was on board with all of this.
Yeah.
It might have been his idea.
Right.
And as long as it's clear that when it gets to the the execution of the game plan on Sunday or Monday, whenever it is, that he's the one making the calls,
Right.
then we're good to go. But this happens all the time around.
Sure.
Adam knows this too
Yeah.
from people that we.
I'm going to tell a quick story.
Yeah.
So Juan Castillo actually would call around and get information from other coaches around the league when he was the Eagles D coordinator. Remember now, his was a little different. He had not coached defense since he was in college,
Right.
and he was new to it, so he was asking for opinions with active coaches, okay? This is a long time ago, so this is interesting. I talked to a couple coaches who spoke to him. This is obviously, this is a long time ago. But yeah, look, guys get opinions, but as Greg said, this is official, but I just find it not one, but two coaches are helping out Gannon.
That is true.
In his second year.
I actually like it because when you get an offensive coach helping out the defense, you're going to get a different perspective. It's different from Juan just totally switching the ball, or Patricia switching, and then they're responsible for play calling.
Right.
But an offensive coach can look at Jonathan Gannon's defense and say, this is how I would attack your defense.
Right.
And this is the holes that this offense has. They don't have this person in position to be able to pick up this type of a stunt.
Right.
Those types of things, right? So I think it's advantageous to our team.
Can I tell a very quick story?
Sure. You may.
You remember Rod Rust?
Oh yeah, I watched film with him with
we
you
used to come
years
into
ago.
NFL Films for about 5 or 6 years. He's unfortunately since passed away, but when he retired from coaching, and he started coaching in the mid-1960s. In fact, he coached Joe Green at North Texas State in the late 60s.
Joe.
Mean
Wow,
Joe.
wow.
And he was so revered as a defensive coach. Wherever he was, players just thought that he knew so much. In fact, he was the D coordinator in Pittsburgh for 1 year, and Rod Woodson, in his Hall of Fame speech, made it a point to talk about Rod Rust.
Wow, that's
So do you know who he is, by the way?
Yes.
So for about 5 years, he came into NFL Films every Monday and watched tape with me, and I learned more about defense than I ever knew before.
He actually quizzed me, and I think I'm a novice now. Watching tape. It was the coolest thing. And by the way, he was the Patriots head coach for 1 year, I think.
Right, and it was a bad
1990.
year,
Yeah.
But he was
Great
the
man.
Chiefs D coordinator under Marv Levy back like from 78 to 83.
Sure.
He was in the league a long time.
Yeah.
And the one thing, well, he taught me many things, but one thing that he said very early on that I'll never forget was any time that you structure your defense, you have to know how to beat it. He says if you don't know how to beat your own defense, then you can't be a good coordinator.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
That's a great point.
And in fact, he's the one who's considered to be the pioneer of quarters coverage, sort of the founder of quarters coverage, which now has so many variations and permutations, but he's the one who initially came up with the concept of quarters.
Right.
But he said that if you put together a defense and you don't know how to beat it, you're going to have a really hard time. So the point I'm making is you bring in a Marcus Brady, and maybe his job is to figure out, okay, the Eagles defense is playing well, but hey, here are the potential cracks in the defense as we go forward, and teams start to figure out certain things. Here's how you can get beat.
Right.
Here's what we have to make sure we shore up as we go forward, because ideally, the goal's not to play 17 games this year. The goal is to play more than 17 games.
Right.
It helps the players out too, because the players know, if the players know defensively where they're weak at, they'll begin to compensate for that for you as a defensive coordinator. If they know, if you know in cover 3 that that I have this guy on this side and I have another guy, he's going to cheat to one side just because he knows where the weakness is. Yeah, so I agree.
Because keep in mind, every zone has voids.
void.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everybody would play the same zone.
Of course.
So you have to figure out how those voids cannot be exploited.
Right.
Based on how the offense, shows with their personnel, formation, concepts. You have to make sure that, hey, we just don't get beat on this concept every single week.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. That was great stuff right there. Must have been a great question.
Yeah.
That I asked him. All right, let's get into injuries. Both teams have some severe injuries, and will be without some very important personnel today. Once again, the Eagles will be without Dallas Goedert, their tight end, who was on his way to having what we thought was a Pro Bowl-like season. He'll be missing his second game of 4 as he's on IR with a shoulder injury. Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, first-round pick, also out. This will be the 4th of 4 games. We'll see what happens to him this week as far as being able to be activated into the 21-day window. And Avonte Maddox, starting slot corner, will miss his third of 4 games as he is also on IR. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury. However, it doesn't seem like anybody else is going to be sidelined. Devontae Smith's going to be good to go. A.J. Brown was sick earlier in the week. He was fine. Looks like he's good to go as well. Josh Jobe, I believe, will be
He's available if they want it. Yeah,
right.
yeah, they
So
could
he's
have
going
him
to be active tonight?
Well, he's available to play
We'll
because he took reps Friday and they did not give him a game status designation.
Correct.
So theoretically, everyone on the 53 would be available. So Jobe is a guy that I know they don't see him playing inside right now, but they like him as a developmental backup corner and also obviously on special teams.
Got it. All right, that's it for the Eagles. For the Packers, they are very likely to be without their all-pro linebacker, Devondre Campbell. He's been dealing for weeks now with a
4 weeks.
4 weeks, right, with the knee injury.
Yeah.
I know he did some limited work in practice. They haven't ruled him out yet. We'll get the inactives will come out a little bit later today, so we'll be on top of that. But very, very unlikely that he's going to play. Now, definitely not playing our outside linebacker, pass rusher, Rashawn Gary. He is on IR with an ACL injury, and also he's out for the year.
Yep, of course. Yep.
And cornerback Eric Stokes, second-year kid from
Also out for the
Georgia,
year.
Yeah.
also out for the year. Greg, I want to ask you in general, when you watch this Packers defense, who fills in for both Stokes at corner position? Maybe a familiar name?
Russell Douglas.
Well, yeah, they made a big change.
Yeah.
Because Douglas is their slot corner. And when Stokes was on the outside with Jari Alexander.
Right.
So they made a major change. Now, again, it's 10 days. They could make another change because what they had done the last 2 games is they moved safety Darnell Savage to be their slot corner. Okay, and they moved Douglas back outside.
Right.
Now, again, with 10 days, they'll evaluate how they feel that went. And, to me, Savage is not a slot corner unless you're just going to play zone all the time.
Yeah,
Do you agree with that, by the way?
I agree 100%.
So, with 10 days, it's very possible there could be another change. But that's what they've done the last 2 games.
and we know another guy, Rudy Ford.
Yeah.
Rudy Ford, who's now their nickel safety. They're not playing dime.
Right.
So Ford's become their nickel safety. And he's actually played pretty well, by the way. But
speed.
as far as playing outside where Gary has played, they've played the rookie from South Carolina, Enagbare, quite a bit, and he's shown up. He's kind of a power guy more than a bend, flexible guy as a rusher. He's certainly not Rashawn Gary, who is having an outstanding year.
Yes.
Garvin plays snaps as well. So they're trying to mix in, a few guys here and there to play. But Rashawn Gary's a big loss.
He had 6 sacks. He was leading the Packers in sacks.
But he's just a really good player.
Good player.
Right.
How do they make up for Devondre Campbell, also a very good player?
Chris Barnes has been their linebacker, when they're in their nickel. And he's played for them for a number of years. He's played meaningful snaps. But Campbell's, last year you could argue Devondre Campbell was one of the top 3 down linebackers in the league. He played almost every single snap for them. He's 6'4", he's 235, he's long, rangy. In some ways, he's like Fred Warner from the Niners. Not as purely athletic, but close. And he's a big, big loss.
All right, those are just their defensive losses, by the way. Romeo Doubs, wide receiver, is out with a high ankle. Questionable, left tackle, David Bakhtiari. We know how good he's been for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it's the same ACL, it's
Yeah.
the same knee that he's dealt with for 2 years, and then Jenkins on the right side will play with his knee issue. He also had the ACL last year. Bakhtiari, Greg, does he look like he's the same guy?
I haven't studied. I hate saying this because, I start to think about what this guy's going to be in 10 years. I hope the guy can get out of bed and walk.
Yeah.
With the, and I
How
say
many
that
injuries
honestly.
he has.
How
Yeah,
many
right.
injuries?
He's a
He
lot
said,
of injuries,
I'm not saying that sarcastically at all.
Right.
Because he's had so many injuries that I almost expect that he's not going to play.
Right.
Because it just seems like he's hurt and at one point he was a really, really good player. I'm just being honest, Adam. I've not studied him as an individual.
Gotcha, yeah.
So I don't want to say anything because I could be wrong.
He's been hurt a lot, he's missed time.
Yeah.
And that to me is where, when we get into the matchups later, that's somewhere I think Eagles could take advantage. Simply doesn't move as well.
Yeah. And of course, the big injury that we know about, we know Aaron Rodgers is going to play. He's been dealing with a broken thumb. So, and we'll get into more Aaron Rodgers, but just quickly, I think people want to know, can he make all the throws still, Greg, when you watch tape
Well,
with a broken thumb?
far be it for me to say how it feels, okay?
Right.
But he still makes great throws on occasion.
There you
He
go.
spins it still. It
Yeah,
still comes off his
It
hand
still
really
comes-
good.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, like I said, he's missed some throws this year that we don't normally see him miss. I can't say whether that's due to his thumb or not, but then when he makes a great throw, which he's made a lot of those too, by the way.
Right.
And it doesn't look like he's lost any velocity. Does it look like that to you?
No, I wouldn't say velocity. The thing that Aaron Rodgers has done that I've seen on for the last two games, he's missing throws that he normally makes.
I agree.
At
That's
a high
right, yeah.
percentage.
Yeah.
Like I've seen him miss 2 flat routes.
Yeah.
That doesn't, like, for a guy that's
Yeah.
his caliber, you know, there's a concept, and for the fans out there that don't know this, every team runs a concept called Packer. And that's basically the inside number 3 or number 2 just runs to the flat while the other guy goes and blocks for him. And it's usually a blitz concept that everyone runs. And he never misses that throw, ever. And it's weird to see him miss it.
And keep one thing in mind. He's very unique in one regard, and this is where his thumb could impact him. Most quarterbacks, when they get ready to throw, particularly if they're on the move, have to pat the football.
Right.
He's a unique thrower in that he can throw on the run without having to pat the football. And maybe,
Which has always been that's a timing mechanism.
yeah,
right?
and again, I can't speak for Aaron Rodgers. I'm just saying that maybe it does affect him that way because if there is something wrong with his thumb and he's not patting, which he's not used to doing, he's never really done that. He's unique. Look, Aaron Rodgers is arguably the greatest
Brady,
thrower
you see
we've
pat,
ever,
a lot of
we've
them do
ever
that.
seen
Yeah.
in the history of the game,
Right.
the way he just throws a football.
Right.
But he's not a pat thrower.
Right.
And so maybe the grip is just not the same when he doesn't pat. I don't know that, but it just might make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The other thing I'll add to that is that you just don't know what I do, how much Devontae Adams means to Aaron Rodgers.
Sure.
Because Devontae Adams is such a safety blanket as a quarterback, for a quarterback, that you don't have to think a lot.
Right.
If he has one-on-one, you don't have to go through
No,
progression.
that's a great point.
Right? So
Yeah.
you don't have to be great in order to have a guy like that.
Right.
And we've seen what Devontae Adams is doing with the Raiders, still leading the league in touchdowns for receivers, still doing great. So him not having that guy and having to be perfect in progression and perfect in ball placement is a tough ask for a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Good stuff. We'll see tonight how Aaron Rodgers is with his receiving core and with that broken thumb that he is nursing. Let's get into the X's and O's of this game. Well, we have to talk about a little bit of last week and some of the things the Eagles did well because we spent so much time on their run defense issues. We talked about the 2 guys they signed off the street. And Jason, I got to start with you because your eyes watching Q&A during the week when you guys talked about it, you and Quentin Michael, your eyes almost were falling out of your head with how much Linval Joseph played, how much Ndamukong Suh played, and how effective you thought they were.
Listen, I don't know if I've ever seen 2 guys be more effective off the couch. We're talking about beers, wings, children's recitals, Xbox and Call of Duty. We're talking about dudes right from the house come in and play NFL downs, and I've never seen it in my time guys play that well.
Right.
So I was flabbergasted on how well they played and also how Linval Joseph moves grown men.
Yes.
Like, there was twice where he literally just displaced a 300-pound man just with a shrug and go and make a play. It was outstanding to me, and those guys have a lot of fire, and usually guys get injured. And it's great to see for Jonathan Gannon because now Jonathan Gannon has 2 guys he can point to and say, this is how I want it to be done.
Yeah.
And now it raises the level.
And how much of an impact you felt overall that those 2 guys, Suh and Joseph, had on the game, Greg?
I would say a big impact. Joseph played 26 snaps.
That's amazing.
All in the base 5-man front.
Right.
He was dominant.
Yeah.
Dominant. I mean, the people that talk about Jordan Davis and the 3 or 4 splash plays he makes every week, but Joseph was literally dominant on almost every play.
Wow.
And Suh played 17 snaps. I believe 11 in the base 5-man front and then 6 in the 4-2-5 nickel. And he had some dominant snaps as well. I mean, these are strong dudes. I love the term you use because, I've learned that from defensive line coaches and defensive linemen. The whole idea is to control and displace. That's the term they use all the time. displace. And Joseph was just moving people.
Right.
And I mean, again, who knows what he was doing? Maybe he was staying in great shape. Who knows? I don't know what he was doing.
But it worked.
But it worked because he was taking 315, 320-pound offensive linemen and moving them.
Sure. That's unbelievable.
It's funny, that's in my notes, but the reverse is that.
He was. Was he not?
So what I would add is they couldn't move him.
Yeah.
Right.
Because remember we said in week 1 that Hargrave and Cox got moved off the ball. In fact, Cox was on his rear end a couple times. Not this guy.
No.
Which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And you add and by the way, Milt Williams played really well. He showed up in this game.
Yeah.
So now you have
the
5
pressure's
guys.
off him now a little bit,
Right.
right?
Well,
You can do what you
Williams
do.
played really well
And
too.
I think Jason made the great point last week. He said, "I'm telling you, these guys are going to feel it. Like Cox and Hargrave are going to feel with the 2 vets coming in.
Sure.
And it's probably going to motivate them. I know there's no way to sort of give a percentage of how much it motivated them, but there's no question because Cox first of all didn't have to play as much.
Right.
Still played a decent amount of snaps, but my goodness, that
Let me ask you a
rotation now is
question.
great. Yep.
I don't follow this the way you do.
Yeah.
Is Jordan Davis's injury likely to be more than 4 weeks, as far as you know?
Well, it could be. I know, Jeff, you have a little
Yeah, I
bit on
mean,
this.
we have to find out this week. They
The
felt
reason I'm saying is because if Joseph and Sue continue playing the way they are, to me, those guys should be playing.
Over Davis, right.
So, I hear you. I doubt if they're going to take Jordan Davis's reps away.
Well, that would
but
be-
I think that it's a perfect situation to learn from for Jordan Davis.
Well, the reason I say that, and I don't mean
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt, continue, is because Joseph only played in the 5-man base front, which is where Davis plays. Davis only plays in the 5-man base front.
Yeah, maybe it's going to curate his role to be what they want.
Right.
Well, doesn't
You know,
that
which is an edge guy. I mean,
doesn't-
we're not an edge guy, but which is a a through
Yeah.
technique. You never
Right.
know.
doesn't that give them though a natural alternate? Because before, when they played their 5-man front, sometimes Jordan Davis had to come out and then a Tui Pelotu or somebody else who's really not built. Now they've got an alternate, a true backup for the starter. Yeah.
Quinn Michael made a very good point on the Q&A show this week when he said these 2 guys could give the Eagles the ability to be multiple in their front. Instead of a 5-man front, they can run a high percentage of 4-man front if they wanted to, which would secure, which will bring more better tackling to the secondary, right? And also add that extra linebacker in there. So now Bradbury and Gardner Johnson not responsible for certain gaps. Now the linebackers can make those plays, which could,
That widespread
benefit
impact.
as well.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good point. That still remains to be seen.
Right.
All right.
It'll be interesting. Of course, it's one game. We'll see, as they
game.
continue playing, what happens.
Think about it. When Davis comes back, they'll literally have 6 defensive tackles. So they're going to have a decision to make. Somebody's not going to be getting in the rotation. Probably Milton Williams.
Williams.
And actually Tui Pelotu would be.
Well, he's on
seven.
IR.
He's on
No, I'm saying
yeah.
when he comes back, if he does, which I don't think he's going to be back, but he would actually be number 7.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe
So-
he's out for the year.
Yes, he's got he's got a meniscus issue. So bottom line is they all of a sudden have great depth. We're about 3 weeks ago, you didn't think they had any depth at D tackle.
I feel like most of our conversation was just about Linville Joseph as far as you couldn't move him, he moved people. Sue plays more of a 3 technique. Maybe a 5 in this front or 4-eye.
Right.
But how do you felt he played and impacted the game?
I think he impacted the game. I mean, I made a note here. There was a play where he beat the right guard on 1st and goal, tackled Taylor for no gain. I thought he was a big factor on the goal-to-go drive in the 4th quarter, both as a run defender and as a pass rusher. I thought he played well too.
Okay.
I mean, he showed up.
Right. Excellent. All right.
Half a sack as well, him and Joseph.
That's right.
Yeah. So he got underneath the guy's pads and still showed strength. Yeah. So, both guys played well for what they were asked to do and where they were asked to do it from, which is the couch.
Right.
Right.
You're going to make these guys famous for being the most famous people, 2 guys to be on the couch since Beavis and Butthead.
And let's see how they react.
What it just shows you is that people get it wrong. Because if they can play that well this game and the next couple games, there's a lot of people asking themselves around the league, why didn't we make this decision?
Right.
Sure. Eagles aren't the only ones struggling to stop the run.
But that's what I was going to say is that let's see how they react to last week's game. Let's see how they play tonight, and we now see a pretty good.
Well, they're
rotation.
going to have to stop the run again, which, by the way, they did last week after the first drive.
Yes.
I mean, in the second half, Taylor had 11 for 20.
Hey, man, my Segway machines are at it again. Love that, Greg Cosell. Let's talk about the first drive and then what happened after that. Because the Eagles did some things, I think, schematically different last game against the run, not just plugging in those two guys. But when you looked at the first drive overall, it kind of looked like a recurring nightmare for the fans.
Keep in mind, the long run came on a no-huddle when the Eagles were in their 4-2-5.
Right.
So it came in a no-huddle tempo play.
Yep.
So I'm not saying you disregard it because that's good offense, but I mean, it wasn't against the base 5-man front.
Sure.
It came, on a no-huddle tempo play where they had the Eagles knowing what they were in, and they went no-huddle.
Smart move.
So that's good offense.
Yep.
So I think when they were in their base 5-man front, they played the run well.
They played him well, and on that play where Jonathan Taylor broke it, Bradbury had a chance to shoot and make the play, and said no thank you.
Right.
Made a business decision?
Right. So it was there. Like, remember, you don't get 20-yard, 30-yard runs without a guy not making a play.
Right.
And he was there to make a play. And like I said, that's one of those situations where if you got better personnel on the field, and you don't put your corners in positions to be responsible for gaps, you may make tackles.
Right. What are some of the other things you guys saw schematically that might have been different? I know you talked about a few things. You kept about getting guys flowing in a direction. What did you see from Jonathan Gannon, especially after that first drive, that turned around all the run defensive issues they had been having?
To me, I think it was the implementation of those two guys. I will say is that stopping the run, and I think I think we said it on the Q&A show. I think Q looked at it and said, I don't think there was much difference happening, but those two guys raising the level of the other defensive tackles. There's still a lot of concerns on the defense, though, because they were trying new things in the secondary.
Right.
And got caught out of position a few times.
Right.
And I think we pointed it out on the Q&A show.
Sure. Yeah. So this goes back to something we all talked about last week.
One other thing that they've been doing more of, and again, I can't relate it to specific plays. I didn't chart it that way. But even when they were in their 4-2, they were putting White on the edge, on the ball, quite a bit more than they've done in recent weeks. So essentially it became a 5-man front, even in their 4-2 personnel.
Right. Yeah. So they're trying to.
So they're still looking to create a 5-man
right.
front, even in their 4-2 personnel.
Sure.
Because Edwards is so good as a stack backer, a key and diagnose, that they feel comfortable, with him. And then they because they don't play a ton of pure single high, they always have a safety that kind of in a quarters look that's available as a run defender, as an alley run defender.
Yes.
And both Gardner Johnson and Epps are good at that, I think, anyway.
I thought I noticed
that
they would have a safety a little closer to the
yeah.
to the box.
But I think that was one thing I noticed that they did more of, and I don't know if that was specific to last week or we'll see it as well this week, but they would play White on the ball on the edge as opposed to an off-the-ball stack player.
Maybe a combination of what had happened the week before, plus you're going against a very good running back in a running game. You know that's their base concept. Going back to what Jason said last week about Fletcher Cox, right? You said the addition of a guy like Sue especially is I love how you worded it. You said a smack in the face. Not a slap in the face, which can be disrespectful, but a smack in the face is like a wake-up call. It's like, hey, come on. And I thought you saw, as you mentioned, Adam, you got the same feedback. Fletcher Cox got through some double teams. Fletcher Cox showed you he can fight against the run. He doesn't have to get swallowed up every single time. As I just dropped my pen, you felt that the smack in the face worked for a week.
Probably, but one thing I do want to say about Cox is that, and we saw this after week 1. Okay, he has a bad game, plays better. So-so game, plays better. Let's leave the new guys to the side here. He's got to just have a consistent effort.
Yes.
Like that, I could tell you when we've talked to people who graded the Eagles tape over the years, some weeks he just doesn't bring the same effort. You could see it actually on the coaching tape. You could see whatever it is, you don't know what is in his head. But quite frankly, when he decides he wants to be the best player on the field, he actually can still do that. You see this, you see flashes of it. And that's the concern with him, is he going to bring it every game?
Well, that's what happens when you get older. It's not always that you
want to turn it on and off. You can't turn it on and off. You know, you can't turn it on when you want to when you get a little bit older, and that's usually the sign. Like, I remember, you know, getting older, like I can do it for a game or two,
right?
And then it took me a couple games to get that mojo going again. It's just, you just don't have the same energy that a 22-year-old, 25-year-old has.
So the Washington game, their whole line was great, but he played really well. You'd like to see that effort from game to game?
The first Washington game or second?
No, first one, right. Exactly, when they had 9 sacks.
Yes.
But Jason makes a great point. Is it that he's just not the same guy? Or is it that this is plagued him throughout his career? Every once in a while, he just doesn't show up with the same energy.
Right.
Don't know that.
No, I think sustainability is the big factor as they move on and go on. All right, let us talk. I mean, you still have to expect, based on what we've seen from the Eagles defense, what we've seen from Green Bay, that the Packers will be relying on the running game pretty frequently tonight. Aaron Jones entered Week 11 as the NFL's 8th leading rusher. He's also averaging 5.4 yards per carry, which is 4th highest among the NFL running backs. You know, Greg, I thought going into the year, just looking at their personnel, that they were going to try to be more of a 1-1A, you know, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon year 2, but it seems to be right now, they do work A.J. Dillon in, but Aaron Jones is having a pretty good year.
He's having a really good back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they probably ended up running the ball a little more than maybe they thought they would going into the season. Mm-hmm. You know, Jones, he's obviously explosive on the edges, and they do get him on the perimeter, but he's a tough inside runner as well, whereas Dillon, for the most part, is an inside runner.
Right.
You know, with Dillon, you're going to get gap scheme, you're going to get duo, you're going to get inside runs. Jones, they try to get on the perimeter. So it's important to set the edge to turn him back inside. You can't let him get clean to the edge.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jay.
Greg made the point earlier, is that the Packers have shown that they play better with a higher percentage of run. They beat the Cowboys rushing the ball 60% of the time.
Yeah.
You just don't see that. And the numbers from this year is like they're 58% or whatever it is pass. In comparison to other years where when Aaron Rodgers is good, they're almost at the higher ends of 60%, right? But this year is an anomaly. It's different. And I think that they have to rush the ball, and I think that the Eagles are going to see a high percentage of run tonight.
Although I think the one area, though, in addition to running, Jones could crush you in the pass game. He is phenomenal out of the backfield.
Right.
Oh, he is.
And I don't know why we have not seen a lot of teams attack the Eagles linebackers. I know Edwards has been great in coverage. White's been pretty good, too. But Jones is another guy that could get you outside.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how many times they go empty, because that's something they've done through the years with Rodgers, because he's so good at seeing what the defense is doing before the snap of the ball, because he's super smart. And Jones is really, really good as a detached player. So we'll see if that's something they do, because, you know, defenses normally have to define themselves. The Eagles are not necessarily a high percentage blitz defense.
Right.
But Rodgers obviously has a really good feel of getting rid of the ball and knowing what he's looking at.
Yeah. And they're not a high percentage overall man team, so it's hard to exploit the linebackers. Right. And the only way you really can do that is if you create like a two-level type of thing where the guys are running off deep and you get some underneath coverage. It's very hard to isolate the Eagles linebackers.
Sure. So getting back to the running game, how would you compare the Packer rushing attack, whether it's using Dillon, using Aaron Jones, compared to what Indianapolis does with Jonathan Taylor? Is it more of a are they more wide zone? Because it looked like with Taylor, they were trying to attack the Eagles right up the middle.
Right. Well, I think, like I said, I think with Jones, you'll see multiple run game concepts.
Sure.
But they do get him on the perimeter. Dillon is much more of an inside runner. Dillon, you're not really going to, once in a while they'll do that just to probably break a tendency. But Dillon, for the most part, is an inside runner, where you'll see more inside zone, more gap scheme, duo, where you have the two double team blocks inside. You know, and I think that's the way they'll try to deal with it, and the Eagles will have to stop it.
Right.
It's pretty funny because like there's this concept that the Packers, like I said, have been known for. Packer, they usually put in, you know, either a tight end or a trip situation where they're either going to throw this basically flat route concept or run the ball opposite. And it's a very, very easy concept to maintain. It's usually a stretch outside, and then on the backside of it, if they get the numbers, they'll throw it. And it's something they've been doing for years.
Okay. All right. So that's something the Eagles will have to watch for tonight.
Yeah.
Most importantly. Adam, it's such a confusing Packers offense. When you look at them statistically, there are certain things that jump out, and I say, wow, they're 7th in time of possession. That's actually pretty good for an offense that struggled. However, only 15th in total yards, 14th in third down percentage, 18th in red zone efficiency. I don't know. What do you make of just their in general all over the mapness?
All of their receivers have missed time. Dobbs, high ankle sprain. Lazard's shoulder, it's still bothering him, by the way. Cobb came off injured reserve. He just came back last week, had a good game against the Titans. And Watson missed pretty much all of their offseason with hamstring problems. And he had a concussion, and he's just getting back to health. And obviously you saw what he did with the 5 touchdowns over 2 games. But no, they've missed a lot of time. They've had protection problems. And Jason said they're running the ball probably more than they'd like to.
Right.
This is not, look, with that group of pass targets, you like to get them the ball more. But they'll move the ball down and then they'll stall in the red zone.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's completely confusing is what has happened to Robert Tonyan? I know he had the ACL last year, but he's been healthy this season. He's just not getting the football.
I thought he would be a bigger part of their offense.
And I think he's a good player, and I think their pass game for the most part has just not had a lot of continuity to it.
Yeah.
They've made individual plays here and there, but I don't think their pass game's had a lot of continuity to it.
It's very interesting to me to see guys coming back from ACLs because some of them come back and it's like they never got injured some in the past.
Right.
And then this year in particular, I think it stands out because Michael Gallup came back. He has not looked explosive in the past.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin took a couple of weeks. He's just now starting to round into form.
Yep.
And Tunyan's a guy I really thought was going to be a huge part of this offense, but maybe he just doesn't have his natural explosion.
How many times in the past have you seen the Packers offense to the boundary in the red zone throw Devontae Adams a back shoulder fake
Oh,
Yep.
yep.
Oh,
or
yeah.
a slant?
Right.
You just don't have that luxury.
They don't have that guy, right.
You don't have that luxury.
Right,
So of course
right,
your red zone offense is going to take a hit because now you have to depend on guys to win in situation. Christian Watson won a jump ball situation, but you're not going to make that catch that he made against the Titans with a broken play.
Right.
You're not going to make that play 9 out of 10 times. You're just not going to make that play, and it's not a way to sustain offense.
Greg, we would talk to you on John Hanson's Fantasy Points live stream earlier in the season. You were like, at some point, Rodgers got to trust these guys. Did you notice anything with the timing? Guys were not there?
Well, the point I was making is that at some point, and Jay could speak to this probably better, these are the guys you're playing with. You got to throw the ball. I mean, that's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. You know, these are the guys you're playing with. You can't sit back there and turn down throws because you're not comfortable. Right. I mean, this is who you're playing with. Coaches work for 16, 17 hours a day putting together game plans and concepts.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to drop back. If this is the route concept, look, this is the NFL. Guys are not necessarily going to be wide open all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
You got to turn the ball loose.
Let it go.
You got to let it go.
And he's never been that guy, like not consistently.
Right.
Like if he sees color, I just remember like him having those big tight ends and throwing it right over the linebacker's head in the middle of 2 defenders in the middle of the field and completing it.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to see 100% color and a lot of separation.
Right.
You gotta let it go.
You got to turn it loose.
All right.
And the reason he has to is because he has a bunch of guys that don't separate the best. And that's just the truth.
We will get into that in just a second.
Yeah.
We want to take a quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
Big thanks, as always, to our friends at Sky Motor Cars. If you want to hop out there and see them in Westchester, PA, tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal, or you can visit them online at SkyMotorCars.com. We've got some early score predictions in already. Not surprisingly, a lot of people picking the Eagles tonight. John Dickerson, Eagles 31, Packers 17. Anish David says Eagles win 27-21. Jazz Fusion, 28-20 Eagles. Adams exploits, and I think this is worded very, very specifically. He says Green Bay 20, Eagles 24. He likes to go with the losing score first. Carl Stevenson, our friend, says 27-14. Also, big thanks to our viewers as we have just exceeded 12,000 followers, or subscribers, I should say, to our YouTube channel. So we want to thank you all out there. That's a big number in such a little time for us. So thank you to everybody who has participated there. We were just talking about Aaron Rodgers. Now, he's been a thorn in the Eagles' side. He's also the league's, I believe, 2-time reigning MVP. So even though he is not having the greatest year along with the Packers, he's still someone that you have to be very concerned about. In fact, it was just 2 weeks ago, Greg, against Dallas, right, that he had 3 touchdown passes. Now, they ran the ball mostly,
right,
but he had 3 touchdowns in that game, and they won. They upset the Dallas Cowboys, I think, in Dallas, correct?
It was, yeah. They threw the ball 23 times. There were 23 dropbacks.
It was in Green Bay.
It was Green Bay, you're right,
yeah.
There were 23 called dropbacks in that game. He had Watson on a deep throw where he got on top of the corner. And then I thought, actually, Watson, ran a very refined route. It was a 4th down call where Watson ran across the field. And then there was another shorter touchdown where it was man coverage and Watson ran away from the man coverage, which he can do.
That's what he's going to do well.
Yeah.
He still does that well.
Because he's long and he can run.
Right.
But, I remember studying Watson. We had this conversation leading up to the draft. And I spoke to some coaches, receivers coaches in the league who've been doing it a long time. And you can speak to this better than I can. And you actually have spoken about it at times on the show. I think he needs to be taught how to catch the ball running like on dig routes when the ball's thrown out in front of him. I don't think he knows how to catch those balls.
Toughest catch in football.
Yeah.
It's the toughest
Do you
catch
agree
in
with
football.
me? No, he doesn't know how to use his hands to catch.
Toughest catch in football is breaking in toward the ball, especially flat.
Right.
Catch and the ball's coming through because the quarterback throws it like you are far away from him. So he guns it in there, but you're meeting him, so the ball is going to get closer to you as you're coming in. And usually the guys that catch it this way are not going to have high catching percentages. Just not. You have to go out in front, see the ball where your hands are, catch it that way. You got to have strong enough hands to do that.
That can be taught, right?
Yes.
It can be taught. What happens is that when your left hand on top, guys don't like that. It's not comfortable. And it's something that
because
you got to
if you're right-handed, that becomes your lead hand, and you're just not.
I remember having that discussion about Terry McLaurin and
right.
on a certain side.
And he has to learn how to do that. If you notice, unless it's a softer throw, okay, which you can sort of cradle the ball in with your hands. But if you notice, he catches a lot of balls with his body. Because he's just not comfortable catching the ball. Even that long touchdown he caught against Dallas, he kind of caught it like you remember that play? He kind of cradled it in there.
Yeah. Right. The thing is that guys have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you're out there in practice and you're catching balls that are just comfortable right down the center of your body, you're not getting better, but it's making you feel like you're practicing.
Right.
But you're not getting better. You being put in a situation where you're uncomfortable, the ball is over here, the ball is up there, whoever's throwing the ball has the variety of throwing the ball wherever they want, and you reacting to it, though you put more on the ground, you're getting better at it.
Right.
I want to get back to Rodgers with you for a second. You were there, 2010.
Yeah.
Green Bay comes into Philadelphia. They got injuries everywhere. They had like 15 guys on IR to start their playoff run. They come into Philadelphia. You guys were on fire with Mike Vick at the time. They win the game, and that's really kind of the start of the Aaron Rodgers story of his ascent to greatness. He won the Super Bowl that year. I believe they had to win every game on the road because they started here and won that game. What stuck out to you at that point about Aaron as he was starting to come into his own?
Ball placement. Back in those days, Aaron Rodgers, if you gave him a throw, his ball placement was impeccable. And the game was a lot closer than it should have been because of James Jones dropped one, I think, right before halftime. So he ended up dropping a touchdown. And he was the quarterback that you couldn't sit back in zone and expect good things. He was going to pick that apart. You had to apply pressure to him. And in those days, he actually ran it a lot more too. He actually scrambled for first downs in those days.
Right.
So he was a guy that didn't have weaknesses, and he made everyone better.
Yeah. Rodgers there's not a lot of guys like this. People might think there are, but there aren't. Rodgers is a velocity thrower because he can throw with tremendous velocity, with precise ball location.
Yep.
There's not a lot of guys like. There's a lot of guys that guys have big arms, but they're not precise ball location passers. I mean, there's not been that many when you go back many years. Troy Aikman was like that. Troy Aikman was a velocity thrower with really precise ball location. Carson Palmer was like that. A really, could really muscle it up and throw with great velocity and with great ball location. Rodgers is one of those guys. I mean, his ball placement is just remarkable, and on the move. That was the other thing. He could throw the ball 25, 30, 40 yards down the field on the move, and literally like he was handing it to you.
Sure. I remember talking to one of the Eagles coaches. This is one of the times he played here, and Rodgers, what frustrated him was they could not get to him because his release is so quick.
Oh,
yeah. And it bothered this one guy I spoke with. It really bothered him because they thought they had a good game plan, but he defeated their game plan.
And if you remember, you probably remember this. When Rodgers came out of Cal, Jeff Tedford was his head coach.
Yep.
And he taught holding the ball up here.
Oh my God.
And if you think about it, you can't really do anything athletically with your hand. Even try running with your hands up here.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't do anything. And I remember sitting with Jaws, and you could have been there as well.
Sure.
And Jaws said, as soon as he gets to the league, that will change. And of course, as soon as he got to the league, now he didn't play his first 3 years, but obviously there's no coach in the NFL that's going to teach a guy to drop back with the ball up here.
The one thing is that I agree with that pocket manipulation too. That's another thing that makes him great. There's times where Aaron Rodgers didn't have the greatest line, but guys still couldn't get to him. Yes, it was a quick release, but it's also being aware of where guys were on the field, stepping up, giving the guy a chance to get another block. He'll miss a block, he step up, move back. He was great at pocket manipulation. And I would say some of the best throws I've ever seen in the NFL, in my NFL lifespan, has been from Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. And he could reset his throwing platform in a heartbeat.
Right.
Because he also has really quick feet. As you said, this is different than running and making plays, but he could reset his feet in a heartbeat.
I would say in my lifetime, not that I'm that old, but in my lifetime, he's the most physically gifted quarterback that I've ever seen play. And there are some tremendous quarterbacks out there, from Elway to Vic to anybody. But I just don't know, who has more. When you write the checkboard of what you want out of a quarterback, I don't know if there was a check mark that he didn't.
No.
He had everything.
Yeah. So on what Greg said, I asked Mike McCarthy at the Combine, whatever year Tebow came out, I'm like, Coach, if you drafted Tebow, what would you do? He goes, listen, I'll just tell you what I did with Aaron Rodgers. We lowered his carriage point, and it was what Greg was saying. I still have that quote, and it plays what you just said. He said, we just didn't think it would work at this level.
It doesn't.
Because what he talked about, though, is he was afraid to get it stripped. And that was a big thing. He said, in this league, when you're holding it this high, it's going to get knocked out.
Right.
All right, well, if you guys need any reminder that Aaron Rodgers is 4-1 against the Eagles in his career. The only loss actually came not too long ago. You remember that Sunday night game in Green Bay where they decided to run, and the Eagles won that game. That was Doug Peterson's first year?
I remember.
No, 2019, his third
That
year.
was a game, as I recall, where the Eagles needed to win that. It was an early season game.
Yeah, they started off 1-3.
And everybody just assumed they were going to go into Green Bay and get beat.
Right.
And they went in and they beat, and I think they scored over 30.
Is this
when they Wentz was the quarterback in that game?
No, that was the second coming of Nick Foles season.
That season, yes, but Carson Wentz started that game.
Wentz started that game.
In fact, the game is sort of infamous now for not being aesthetically pleasing to the
ownership
that they had to run.
They were to run
the ball on their way to
right.
win.
That was the drop.
That was the Sunday night game.
Craig James game. Was that the Craig James game when he had the deflection?
He did have the deflection at the end. They were looking for Sidney
Jones,
Jones, and they came out with Craig David. So Aaron Rodgers against the Eagles, you guys should know, there's no quarterback who's thrown at least 150 passes against the Eagles that has a higher passer rating in their lifetime than Aaron Rodgers at 106.1. He also has the highest completion percentage against the Eagles at 67.4, highest ever passing yards per game at 312, and the highest yards per attempt against the Eagles at 8.1. Only second in touchdown percentage at 6. I mean, the numbers against the Eagles are just ridiculous. I know they are against every opponent that he plays, but like I said, no other quarterback has done these things against the Eagles.
The highest passer
rating against the Eagles.
No. Yards, 312. That's the highest?
Career. He averages 312 yards per game
against any opponent. Okay.
Yeah.
And the Eagles over.
There is no other quarterback who has thrown at least 150 passes in their career against the Eagles who have averaged more.
Okay.
All right. Let's get back into the receiving weapons, because you guys started to talk about Christian Watson, the rookie. Greg, I remember everything you said about Christian, you had talked about in March.
Right.
On with us. So instead of re-diagnosing that, he obviously has 5 touchdowns over his last 2 games. He does separate well. This is the type of guy that I think Jonathan Gannon absolutely wants to avoid at all costs, because he doesn't like getting beat over the top.
Right. He was an interesting evaluation in college because he just ran by people at his level. So when you watch a guy do that, you have to think to yourself, is he just going to run by people in the NFL? Because rarely does that happen. Wouldn't you agree? Rarely, you know.
You got to be in a perfect situation. For that
So we know he can do it. I mean, obviously he's 6'4" and he can run. So what is the biggest thing that a defensive coordinator does not want to happen? A long touchdown, obviously.
Yes.
And we know that that's a big thing with Jonathan Gannon, because that's the way he played defense all last year,
right,
just to make sure that would not happen.
Right.
And the Eagles don't give up a lot of big plays like that.
Right.
But it can happen. He can run by people. I don't know if I view him at this point as a volume target.
No.
You know, maybe over time.
Right.
But certainly not now. He's not a volume target. You know, Cobb is back, and Cobb is a guy that Rodgers is clearly comfortable with, and Cobb can work the middle of the field effectively.
Right.
You know, and I agree with Adam, though. I mean, Tunyon, to me, it would seem that he should be a bigger part of it from a volume perspective, and I can't explain why he's not, but it seems like he should be.
Jason, Allen Lazard or Christian Watson scare you a little bit more in this type of game?
Christian Watson, because of his playmaking down the field ability and the way he's coming on, 5 touchdowns in 2 games. Allen Lazard can run, and Rodgers trusts him more. But 4.36 and 6'4",
right,
when it comes to just deep crosses, shallow crosses, that guy can take it to the house if you hit him in stride. Now, just uncovering in a one-on-one route situation may not be something that he's going to succeed at a high volume. Like you ask him to run slants,
right,
or you ask him to run a dig, stuff like that. It's not going to happen like that. But this guy can run. His game will go to the next level. I'm always reminded of Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, once he figured out that you can use releases to get more open, that's when he became Tyreek Hill, the one that no one can guard. And once Christian Watson figures that out, that you can use sticks and subtly in order to get open, he'll be uncoverable. Not at this point, though.
I would say, just to play off what Jay said, he's what I would call a movement receiver now. Just the routes you're talking about.
Yeah.
Slants, crossers, overs, digs, where he's moving. You know, he's not at this point a sort of throttle down and
line up
snap
and be your
off
guy.
routes. You know, he's not going to do that.
Right.
I did think on the 4th and 6th touchdown, believe it or not, that he caught against Dallas 2 weeks
Cowboys,
ago.
Yeah.
I thought he showed a pretty good understanding of how he had to beat both his man defender, who I believe was Anthony Brown, and the deep safety. I thought he showed some refinement there, which leads me to believe that he's probably coachable and reasonably smart.
He's a really good kid.
Yeah, and how he goes
really
about
good.
doing his job.
Right.
He's not there yet,
Right.
but that he could get there.
So knowing what we know about Jonathan Gannon and his fear of beating over the top in single coverage, no blitzing tonight, I assume.
Well, they're usually around 25%,
Right.
maybe a little bit lower, and they're somewhere middle of the league.
I think he would love to not have to blitz tonight.
Well, and the one thing about Lazard is, I know he doesn't run fast, but he can get loose down the field. He's done that in his career. He's just been hurt a lot. But no, they've got size. Lazard's a big guy. In fact, the Eagles, they actually tried to sign him off of the Jaguars practice squad years ago.
That's right.
They want to make him a tight end. And he said no, and then the Packers got him and turned him to his receiver, and he's not bad.
Well, that's what he was in college, coming out of Iowa State.
Right.
He was a wide receiver.
Yeah. All right, interesting stuff there. All right, we are going to take a split-second break to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city. and this is my place.
All right, big thanks to our friends here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, the host site of the Inside the Birds pregame live, and we got a very spirited crowd. If you guys at home haven't noticed yet, everybody's really fun, having a good time here, placing bets, placing wagers, and as we know, the Eagles are favorites again. A favorite every this year so far.
Oh
right?
yeah, in fact, that's the guess is when will they be a dog? Maybe
sure
at Dallas, maybe.
Maybe, we shall see. They are 6.5-point favorites. The over-under is 46.5. So you're making bets or you want to place wagers, make sure you're doing it here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook or on your Bet Rivers app. And if you do come down here, let me tell you, the food from Jack's, every Eagles home game, you get $2 Miller Lights, $15 bottomless chips and salsa, $12 pretzel bites, $16 easy peel shrimp. They also have the home field advantage spin and win contest for bettors who place a qualifying game day bet in the Bet Rivers Sportsbook. They enter to win the spin to win contest held every Birds home game by placing at least a $50 bet on pro football. The maximum number of entries per wager is 3 per transaction. 8 winners are pulled via random drawing to spin the wheel. The prizes include free play, cash, 2 tickets to an Eagles home game, and if the Eagles win, 2 more winners get selected. So that's already 9 times this year out of 10 that 2 more winners have been selected. All right, don't forget they got the Choose the Champs Weekly Pick'em Challenge too. All that here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, where Philly loves a winner. All right, and obviously the people watching on YouTube think the Eagles are going to be winners. Rican Rock says Eagles 28, Green Bay 21, go Birds. Kenzo Rome has it Eagles 30 and Green Bay 24. And of course, RCW Cardco has 31-20, Eagles win. What do you got?
By the way, they're not happy with you from our show that dropped on Friday. They are not happy with you picking against the Eagles. They don't understand why, though.
Hey, you're spoiling the end of this show.
But again, that was the show on Friday.
Let me just take a minute.
They want some needles.
Nobody on this cast has to be convinced of anything because they all think analytically. I never thought the Eagles were going undefeated. Doesn't mean I hate them. Doesn't mean I have no faith in them. I just didn't think they were going to go undefeated.
You're obviously a hater.
I did not think they were going to go 6-1 either. There is one guy.
Is that a hot take?
What's that?
It's a sizzling
That's a hot take.
Right. Let me just assure everybody, the one person who tweeted me that I have no faith in the Eagles offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, or head coach. Because I just say that every once in a while you lose a game. It doesn't mean, has there been a Super Bowl champion who's been undefeated in the last 10, 15 years?
There's only been one.
We live in a generation where 2 things
he's all
can't be true.
I know. It has nothing to, you're looking way too into it if I don't pick the Eagles to win. Trust me. You spend more time thinking about it than I probably did. Like Greg takes 10 seconds to think about his player to watch. It depends what week it is.
Yeah, right.
Might have just been 10 this week. All right.
This was Thanksgiving weekend. I took 10.
Oh, good. You had more time, though, I thought.
But
I worked every day.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Every day?
I had to watch
Even Sundays?
I did.
All right. We do love everybody who watches and interacts, whether they rip us or not, so we appreciate it. All right. Just to finish off the discussion, I think we've all said, Adam and I said this on the pod, as we looked at the Eagles this year, finishing off the discussion on Aaron Rodgers, is if there's one team or 2 teams that's struggling that you think might get it together by December, I put Green Bay on the boat just because of what they have in Aaron Rodgers. Now, I thought they would have kind of gotten it together by now, so maybe it's just destined to be one of those years, but I still look at that team, if they somehow get into the playoffs, and they're probably the way the system is now, they're probably only 1 game out, they could probably be a scary team to play in January. Or
get Dobbs back from his high ankle, but Rodgers, the thumb last week, he missed the throws. As guys were saying, which are just inaccurate. And then look, their defense really is. I'm going to call them soft, but a lot of people in the league that I've talked to, they don't really respect the Packers defense all that much. It's talented, but they don't play up to the level.
I was just going to say that, Adam. When I look at their defensive front, they've got good players. Now, obviously, Gary's out for the season.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah.
But when you look inside, they've got pretty good play. Kenny Clark is a good player. Lowry is a good player.
Yep.
I'm missing, who's the other guy who starts inside for them? I'm missing him right now.
We talked about him on the pod too, and I can't remember his name at the moment. But
Jaron Reed.
Oh, Jaron Reed.
Reed, right.
Oh, yeah, who
he's
can
a
rush
good
the
player
passer.
as well.
Yeah.
But they don't play like that all the time. Mm-hmm. And so they're not a really good run defense. even though you would think in their base front, now their base front is normally a 5-2, so they play a 5-man front as well. And those 3 interior players as individuals are good players, but it doesn't always translate into production and stopping the run.
Sure.
And that's, hey, I'm not smart enough to figure that out, but that's the reality of watching tape.
First time I've ever heard Greg say he's not smart enough to figure something out. So,
but okay. So Greg talked about it. Their run defense hasn't been that great.
Right.
I'm interested to see what they do this first half.
Yeah.
They typically come out throwing more, but not always.
Here's the thing too. Look at the Packers, and over the last 3, 4, 5 years, what does the Packers play with? A lead.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a difference when you're behind in football games, where you got to bow up.
Right.
Where teams are forced to pass against you, and you can feast and rush the quarterback, and you can shine with Jair Alexander and Savage, who's a great ball hawk when he's at the free safety position, right? So when you consider what they're dealing with and how they've been playing offensively, you're playing a totally different style of defense that you're accustomed to playing.
No doubt about it.
Great point.
Good point. Good point.
Because I actually think Savage and Amos are, as a duo at safety, are among the better safety duos in the league.
Especially when it comes to pass.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if they become a little bit more dangerous down the road. You bring up a good point. How will the Eagles offense play against this Packers defense that could be inconsistent? Jason, we talked about it earlier in the show. The Eagles averaged 26 points per game for the year. That's 4th in the NFL. Last 2 weeks, they have not cracked 21 points. Last game, now they won, but they only scored 17. It was their first game without Dallas Goedert. I want you to explain life without Dallas Goedert right now for the Eagles offense, what it looks like and why it looks that way.
It will be different, and we talked about this on the Q&A show, and we talked about it last week.
Yeah.
Dallas is a premier tight end in this league that very rarely is going to be covered by a safety or a linebacker in a one-on-one situation. Now you have to piecemeal your offense when it comes to tight end play, because Stoll is not a guy that you can depend on to get open on a one-on-one situation. Maybe you could with Kyle Kater or Tyree Jackson, but now you've given it away that it's a dead indicator that this is a pass. So the guys, you have to play offense a little bit different. Now you're going to see the emergence of Quez Watkins, which we saw a little bit more, and you're going to see Devontae Smith get more targets, which he led the team in receptions this game, and also yards.
Right.
So I just think that it's going to be a harder, life is going to be a little bit harder. But we just have to reorient, or we have to just figure out which way, who's going to get the ball in what situations, and take the tight end out of the passing game, just to be honest. Play it through Quez Watkins, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from the Colts defense, which we talked about. It's a good defense, and they match up well.
It's a better defense than the Packers.
Yeah, yeah. But what did you see on tape from the Eagles offense that may or may not have concerned
Well,
you?
the Colts played more man coverage than what they had been playing leading up to that game.
Right.
And again, I don't want to say it gave the Eagles problems, because you don't know that for sure. All you know is what the results are.
Right.
But I know early in the fourth quarter, I loved what they did on the Watkins touchdown. That's a route concept they've run before. They actually ran the exact same route concept for a touchdown a couple of weeks before in the same spot on the field where they hit A.J. Brown for a touchdown. But that was against zone. And what I thought, and again, I'm not in the coach's head, but I would imagine this was the thought process. In the game against Houston, a high percentage zone team, Brown was in the slot to the field, and they ran the exact same concept. In the early fourth quarter against the Colts, they put Watkins in the slot to the field because they were getting a ton of man, and because he's basically running a cross or an over, they wanted speed to run away from man.
Impossible to cover that route with
you
a
know
guy
exactly
that
what
runs
I'm talking
that fast.
about.
Yeah.
So even though Kenny Moore is an outstanding slot corner, he's basically playing with outside leverage because it was single high safety.
Right.
And Watkins just ran away from him. So they took the exact same concept, something that's in their repertoire. It was just outside the red zone, which is, like I said, the same thing against Houston a few weeks before. But they put speed in the slot because they were getting so much man.
Sure.
So I thought that was really good coaching by the Eagles staff.
Definitely, definitely. Now, the RPO has been foundational to what they do, and Dallas Goedert's a big part of that. Do you
No
feel
question.
like that was difficult for them last week and will continue to be?
I would answer this, and Jay could jump in here. I think the RPO is a concept, and obviously players always matter. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and say players don't matter, but the RPO is a concept. You can run the RPO without Goedert. Mm-hmm. You just can do different. Look, an RPO, particularly the pass element of an RPO, all that is based on is protection. Teams are starting to expand RPOs because they're realizing that they can protect. Everybody initially thought, oh, RPO, it's got to be a slant.
Right.
Or RPO, it's got to be a quick throw into the flat. As long as you feel you can protect, you can expand the routes with an RPO. It all comes down to protection.
Sure.
You don't just have to run a slant or a quick throw in the flat.
Right. How much can you expand it, though, with the new crackdown on the illegal man down? I mean, you do have to get rid of the ball fairly
a lot of
quickly
teams are getting
now,
crushed
right?
with the illegal man. Past 1 yard.
Yeah.
Look at Thanksgiving. How many times it happened?
I think a touchdown was called back on that, right?
Right. Well, I mean, obviously you know that going in, so
Sure.
then you just, you see, you coach that.
Coach it, right.
But it's all about protection.
Sure.
Well, there's an element of the screen game where you want to get a guy like Dallas Goedert the ball that
No
you're
question.
going to miss. Getting guys into a screen, a tunnel screen, he's one of those guys along with Zach Pascal that can get another guy into the play where he's blocking and securing the edge. Yes, the outlet off the RPO, that's a Goddard thing. I would say as far as Hurts running the ball, teams are just starting to figure out how to crash the end, make sure that he keeps the ball. And you saw that he started to keep the ball a little bit more later in the game, and it was more effective. Or just scrapping it all and just going with the QB power, QB run, QB draw, and therefore you can use a running back as a blocker. So there's ways around it.
What did the tape look like from an RPO standpoint, or just an offensive flow when Jack Stoll was in on 11 personnel? Because he played the most amount of snaps.
Right.
He's the only one of their tight ends remaining that can both block and receive. It's not a
But
tell
you
when
can
he's
see
out
any
there.
of rarely, I can't remember every play, the routes that Goddard runs.
Of course.
I mean, you didn't really
It's
see
usually
them.
like a flat.
Right.
It's usually that they on the RPO game. It's usually the backside receiver. Sometimes he leaks off up into the middle of the field, and then most of the time it's like a flat concept. But on those particular plays, I don't remember Stoll being.
It was almost
part
like you
of
didn't
that.
notice him when he was out there.
Yeah.
So it's a stark difference to
Yeah.
Dallas.
question.
But I don't think that you're going to ask him to do the same things.
They're not.
Right.
I think they're just going to play with the three viable options, which is Quez, AJ. Why give a guy the ball that has less chances of winning?
Right.
Like as a coach, you want to get the guys that are going to be that produce, and they've shown that they produce. So if a guy goes down like Goddard, I'm not trying to give another guy at tight end his reps when I got a receiver that can do it.
Although I'd like to see Calcaterra. The one
Me
thing he
too.
can do is run. He's just the only thing is I don't know if he's strong enough. But as Jeff said, when he's on the field, it's almost or Jason said, if you know he's on the field, he's probably going to pass the football.
Well, that's the thing.
Right,
What if you have
right.
12 personnel where you have Stoll and Calcaterra?
Do I want to take Quez
But
off
then
the
you're taking
field
Quez
for
off the field, right.
Calcaterra and Stoll?
Right. What are you getting in return?
I'm going to go 11 and play this pass game without tight end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Gonna make him 4.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. 'Cause
If the offense struggles again tonight, Adam, and without Goddard, will you start to think they're in a little bit of trouble just finding their identity and getting it going?
Yeah, I think so. And again, we mentioned this a lot. They just don't get the backs to the football. They're way down in production. Some of it could be attributed to Goddard's emergence before he got hurt, and obviously the addition of A.J. Brown. But listen to these numbers. Through 10 games last year, Miles Sanders had 23 receptions. Through 10 games this year, just 12. That's it. So just over 1 per game. And in Gainwell, he was targeted 32 times last year through 10 games, and he had 20 receptions. This year through 10 games, only 9 receptions and only 14 targets. So he's down well over half in targets. So for whatever reason, I don't know why, they're just not designing. It's not about checkdowns. It's just designing plays for these running backs to get the football.
Well, it is about checkdowns.
You don't think he's taking them?
Well, let me say, running backs get a lot of checkdowns, and checkdowns happen when there's a lot of pressure, and/or the guy at quarterback is not familiar, and he just checks it down. Jalen Hurts is growing and developing. he's getting the ball down the field
so you think he's
and
not
getting
having
it
to
to
check
the
down now.
option,
Got
so
it.
they're
Okay.
not getting to
Yeah.
the touchdown.
Right.
So the running backs is not catching a large percentage because of that.
So maybe they have to design more.
Well, I was going to say, but I think the one thing we're sort of accustomed to from the Andy Reid era and even the Doug Peterson era is seeing the running back intentionally targeted either through screens, lining up in the slot, just
Lining
a
up in the
bigger
slot.
part of the passing offense
In general.
intentionally.
Yeah.
The
No,
way it's
wheel
not
route.
here.
Yeah.
Wheel routes,
I
right.
agree with you that you can add that guy in. I just think that they just have such a plethora of talent at other places. Remember, you want to get the guys that's going to have a mismatch. Is Miles Sanders a mismatch in the passing game?
Against a linebacker, he can run.
He is catching the ball better this year
And
than
now,
ever.
if he is a mismatch, is A.J. Brown a better mismatch against his guy?
Well, he's a better mismatch against anyone, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what you're doing. You're playing
But you had 3 big-time pass targets, now you're down to 2.
Yeah, so you can see
You're
him.
trying to make up for that.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
All right, let me stop you fellas for a second because it's very hot in here.
Yeah,
We
man.
needed some refreshment, and we are welcomed in from Jack's Bar and Grill.
Oh, yes.
By the lovely, I'm looking for a name tag.
Shami.
Shami.
Yeah, she helped us out when we were watching over there.
That's
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you, Shami.
Thank you.
Thank
Wait,
you.
is this your ginger ale?
Yeah, that's my ginger ale. I get the ginger
right,
ale.
no problem.
Thanks.
Oh, you're good.
Who wins tonight, Shami?
There it is.
All right. Not so confidently, but she did say
If
Eagles.
she said Packers, she would be joining you.
Probably.
Yeah, we kicked
Big
you
thanks
out
to
of
Joe at Jack's Bar and Grill, the grill manager there, for the delivery of
Ah,
water
yes.
and ginger ale. Getting back to that, so yeah, I just think it's culture shock for us not to see the running backs more intentionally involved. And Miles Sanders, I don't know what the catch percentage is, but he's actually caught the ball when targeted this year very well. He seems to have overcome.
The guy that's interesting to me, and I don't know what goes on a day-to-day basis, is Gainwell.
Of course.
Because I studied Gainwell hard in his last year at Memphis. He obviously sat out the COVID year. He was a big-time receiver in college. And when I don't mean just check downs and catching the ball and running after catch. They lined him up outside. He played wide receiver essentially at times. He ran wide receiver routes in college.
Didn't he play X?
Really effectively. And he was catching vertical routes. I don't know if you got to see him in college at all.
No, not much.
And he really looked like, if you didn't know who he was and you just saw clips of this guy when he was split, you'd say this guy's a wide receiver.
Right.
And he came in clearly with that reputation, when he came out in the draft. He would have been drafted higher than the 5th round if he had played his last year in college.
Right.
Last year he showed flashes of that as a rookie with the Eagles. This year, like I said, I don't know if he's not. You guys were at training camp probably every day. I was not.
He had a rough camp.
Yeah,
He had a rough
that's
camp.
what I've heard. He had a rough camp. He's not being used that way.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on, but boy, he looked like a really good receiver his last year in college.
Jay, for us, when he's a second-year guy, rough camp, I mean, do you think maybe, listen, I know you're not inside his head, but things can be swimming in your head, you're trying to do more, you're only sporadically involved in the offense. He really does look like he does not catch the ball well, but we knew that was not the truth coming out of college.
It's tough to be in this situation. It's tough for anybody that is 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th option in the offense. It's tough to stay engaged. He doesn't know how many times you're going to get the ball at all, whether it's running and or, catching it. So it's a tough situation to be in. You want an offensive coordinator with enough vision and creativity to keep guys involved so you can prevent this. And this is what you guys are talking about when a situation like Dallas Goedert arises where you don't have them. Can I get to formations and play calls that is going to get, like when have you seen a Texas route call?
Right.
Which was
see
a
the
staple.
Eagles- you don't see the
a
Eagles
staple
call
in
those.
every offense.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
They don't call him here.
No?
And for good receiving backs, that's the thing.
Right.
Like, you see the good receiving backs run Texas routes
Sure.
all the time.
Yeah. It's a good way to get him involved in the game.
Or out flanks where there's 3 guys going across the field and then the running back is going to the flat and he's going through trash the linebacker.
Right.
Yeah, you haven't seen it. So that's a good point. I'm gonna pay attention to that.
All right, definitely. Want to get into Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts ran a lot last week.
He sure did.
You getting your Michigan love now, Jay? From the crowd?
Michigan.
I guess you deserve it.
One guy already told me that I suck a second ago.
Well, listen, if that's not the yin and the yang of the sports world.
Funny story. I'm walking into the Horseshoe Stadium, and an Ohio State fan, 17 years old, walks about this close to me. F Michigan, and just stared me down. I'm like,
He's 17 years old?
17 years old. I can
Jeez.
put this guy in my backpack and like drag him around, right? Skinny kid. I'm like,
These
he
kids
has
don't
no
respect
respect
anymore.
So
He should have said screw.
yeah, so, but anyhow, I'm just like, well, good for you, buddy. And I just walked past him like, I'm not letting this guy stop me from having a job today.
Right.
But I thought about it. The south side of Chicago almost came out. But just,
Almost.
I thought about it for a second.
Listen, I've
Like I
been to the
said,
Horseshoe.
Sometimes you can't help yourself.
I was
you
like,
know?
I should deck this
Right,
guy.
right.
Oh, man, that's good stuff. Let's get back to Jalen Hurts here. He ran a lot last week.
Yep.
He ran the second most that he's run all year, and he actually outrushed Jonathan Taylor, who had that on there. If you bet that, you probably would have won a lot of money. Yeah. So, just even though it was a modest passing attack, he ran well 16 times. He also had his first double-digit run total in 5 weeks. So, as we talk about life without Dallas Goedert, I wonder if this is also something that you're going to see more of to make the offense work, or if that was something that you felt was just situational, the Colts coming after him. Did you feel like he ran because he saw openings, or he was forced to run?
I thought there was a few design runs late in the game.
Later in the game, right?
I thought that because of the man coverage that we alluded to, when you have those situations, you're going to get a higher run total from a guy that can run.
Okay.
So, and that's not something that you get from Jalen Hurts, because when you have a guy that can hurt you with the run, normally teams stick away from the man coverage. They kind of do away with it. They scrapped it out of the game plan, so you kind of dictate the coverage.
Right.
But in this game plan, the Colts went man, and Jalen Hurts makes you pay on some third downs, especially when you're losing a game and you have to fight for your life. And I thought that it just put us in a situation where it was advantageous for us to run.
And one other point. People always think about a quarterback running in a pass call situation where the defense is playing man. Also, if you're playing a lot of man, you can run by design, because what happens if you, let's say, line up a tight end as an attached player and he releases, his man coverage defender runs with him. Right. So he's now no longer part of your run defense.
Sure.
So if you want to play a lot of man, you can be hurt in a normal design run game as well by the quarterback, because you're losing run support players. So, yeah, I think he ran more by design, and then he also had a couple of runs, which he'll always have when there's scrambles.
Can I just say, I forgot to bring this up, the touchdown that he threw to Quez.
Yeah.
That was the jump pass, right? The where he faked the run. No, that was not.
The Quez was early in the fourth. That was 22 yards on the play I was talking about earlier.
Which was the play where he faked the run and then he threw
That was the game before.
That was Washington. Yeah. Did we talk about the whole Ronnie Brown thing, that was supposed to be Ronnie Brown?
Yeah.
Sorry, having a senior moment. Anyway, getting back to
not a senior yet.
Well, I'm getting there.
He is.
I hang out with you guys, see what happans. Let's go back to the decision to run and pass.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Did you see in watching the tape that from an RPO standpoint, or whether run or pass, that there were, because the running game was not as effective as it normally is. His running was effective.
Right.
Running back running was not effective. No. That's usually a marriage that works together pretty well. Why didn't it work this time, Greg?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I've learned, and it's hard to see on tape, and it may be people smarter than I know it, but every time the quarterback's in the gun and fakes a handoff, it's not an RPO. People automatically say it's an RPO.
Right.
Just because that's what an RPO looks like as well. But it's not always. I had this conversation with Greg Roman a few years ago at the Maxwell Club dinner in Philly. And we were talking about it, and he didn't want to give away any trade secrets. But I said, Coach, I just want to ask you, there's a lot of plays where Lamar fakes, and I can tell he's not reading anyone. It's just a fake, And people just assume that all that's an RPO. Now the Eagles do run RPOs, no question, but they're not all RPOs.
Correct.
So I think we have to be careful about that.
Right. So back to the Eagles' running game, though, it was not an effective running game.
Yeah, and I don't think they ran it a lot last week. I don't know.
I thought.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't want to say, as Jay said, I don't want to say that defenses have found a way to stop them. I would never say that, but there's no question that it hasn't been quite as in rhythm and in sync the last 2 games as it was prior. Now, I can't do the kind of studying, and I'm being totally honest, that coaches do to find out every nuance and detail as to why that may or may not be the case.
Sure.
But it certainly hasn't had the same feel, particularly with the pass game overall, to me, that it had earlier in the season.
Do you see the 16 runs by Jalen Hurts as a sort of they needed to do that to win, or is that going to be, with Dallas Goedert out, are you concerned that that's sort of more of the game plan?
No, I think you just hit on it. I think it's going to be in there because they're looking for explosive plays.
Yeah.
And Hurts, I know people are getting on him. What's happening? He's not running as well. He was explosive in that game. Sometimes he runs really well on the fake grass.
Yeah.
And he ran really well. Now, the other thing is, you do worry over time the cumulative number of runs and impact on the body. Josh Allen's going to go through this. I remember talking to the Bills about this. They design a lot for him.
Yep.
But they look at him as this big guy. He's great at getting out of the way. But you saw him in the Thanksgiving game wince. You start worrying the more and more these guys run. I get Hurts is super strong, great lower body and super strong. But you worry over the amount of times that he gets hit over the years.
Sure.
But for now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, I disagree with you from this standpoint. I think Jalen Hurts' runs were because they had to win the game.
I agree.
And they felt it was winning time. And when there's a winning time mentality as a player, you put your body on the line a little bit more. I don't know if they're going to be in that situation often, but I don't think that it's something that we're going to go on forward, where Jalen Hurts is running the ball a bunch. I think that in his mind, he's transitioned that I want to get this ball out of my hand. That's what I've seen for 9 out of the 10 games.
Last year, he was the running game. He led them in rushing.
Yes.
This year, it's changed. I'd agree with you on that point. What I'm just talking about long term, these guys who run a lot, you just worry about year after year after year.
I would say this, Jay, and I agree with you. I would say this game overall, in the way he played, was not his best game. I thought this game he did drop his eyes a few too many times. I thought he missed a couple of things in this game where he broke down in the pocket a little early. Now, only he could tell you why. I can't tell you why. I can tell you that I thought, for instance, he missed a touchdown to Pascal in this game in the second quarter. I don't know if you remember that play.
I don't remember that play.
The note that I made was he missed a TD to Pascal on a corner out on 3rd and goal from the 6-yard line in the second quarter. Now, that's my perception
What did he do
of the
instead?
play.
Was it incomplete, or just did he run it and get a first
He moved.
down?
I forget the result of the play, but he moved.
Okay.
Now, there was also his 23-yard scramble early in the fourth quarter. He had to run. That was actually a really well-designed concept by the Eagles. It was 4 strong, and the Colts played it really well. I believe they were in cover 4, and they took away every throw, and he had to run.
Okay.
And that was and
He made a play.
And he made a play. But I agree, it was that you're in the fourth quarter now, so now you got to win a game.
Right.
And they were losing at the time.
And you gotta so just think about think about it all. Remember, I said they were in the Colts territory 4 times with no points, right? Then you come out the beginning of the third quarter, you get Mailata with a missed assignment that leaves Ngakoue one-on-one with Miles Sanders. Right? Gets a strip. That's a big play that's about to happen to Quez.
Right.
Yep.
Right? So that's a big play that's going to happen.
I remember that.
But that's just a missed assignment by the left tackle. So those are things that are happening.
Sure.
Also, A.J. Brown catches an inside breaking slant route, looks at a guy, stops his momentum, forgets the guy's there, and then fumbles the ball. Those are things that are happening that Jalen Hurts, normally you're not going to have to rush the ball as many times if these plays are executed and you're getting points. The game shouldn't have been that close.
On that play with A.J. Brown, I've not seen that before. There's some times when you go over the middle, the guy didn't want to get hit, but he had the ball and he ran and then he slowed down. What?
Well, he slowed down because he felt the guy that knocked the ball out of his hands' presence. So you know that he's there, but because there was a guy on his upfield shoulder, he just forgot for some reason. In that situation, you either go down or you put both hands on the ball. You don't stay in purgatory.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? And I don't know what this means. I'm just going to state a fact here. The Eagles in the fourth quarter of a lot of games, whether they've been ahead or behind like this past game, they run the football. Now, you can say that as a positive, that they have the ability to do that, because remember, when they had to put away a winning drive against the Cowboys, They ran the ball, I think, on 13 of 17 plays on that drive.
Arizona
the next week, Arizona, 9 of 13 plays on the final drive. They ran the ball.
That's right.
This week, after
also.
the DPI call, they ran the ball 9 consecutive times. So again, I'm just stating a fact. So how they see themselves right now. Now, Hurts is always a part of the run game and a meaningful part because he dictates how defenses have to play. Sure. So he's a big factor in the run game, but they believe for the most part that they can run the ball at winning time. And that's obviously a great trait to have because that's, there's a lot of people believe you throw to get ahead and you run to win.
Yes.
And I think the Eagles do believe
throw
that.
early,
right?
Get the score, run to win. That's the Joe Banner philosophy. That's what he wants.
Also, with Jalen Hurts, to his credit, first of all, he leads a game, a fourth quarter comeback, the third of his career, I believe the first of this year. Big play, he hits. Now, the guy was wide open, but talk about when you have to keep your eyes downfield when you're under pressure. The big play on that drive was Miles Sanders being wide open, way down the field, throws it to him, gets the PI, if I'm not mistaken. Then they're deep. And then the 2 runs that he had, I believe, were design runs out of a spread empty, up the middle.
They were design runs.
And then that was a nice drawn-up run where Kelsey, I guess, kicked out a little bit. He went the other way after seeing the linebacker go, and he's got himself a touchdown.
Let me ask you a question on that touchdown. It's a touchdown run. Do you think that there was a pass option on that as well, or do you think that was a straight call draw?
I thought that was a straight call run. If I'm remembering the play correctly, it's the one that Kelsey went off to the right.
Yes, Kelsey folded. It was a fold.
It folded over to the right. Yeah. I thought that was a called run play. But I didn't see it on the coach's tape.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't see that on the coach's tape. So I wouldn't be able to tell you like you would.
No, the only reason I asked
I saw it on the broadcast tape.
Is because I saw. Dan Orlovsky did a whole thing about how that he called that a pass run option, and that there were 2 potential throws on that given play, and I kept looking at it. And what if you're going to say that? And I'm not saying he's wrong or right, but if you're going to say that, then you have to say to yourself, okay, what would make him throw the ball?
Right.
Okay.
That was such a wide.
Right. What would make him throw it? Now, for instance, on that play, Devonta Smith was split out to the right, and the corner was playing press man. Now, I don't know how it's taught, but if it's a pass run option, I would think that the press man, and again,
triggers the pass.
Triggers the pass.
99% of the time.
Wouldn't it?
Yes, 99%. 99%.
So that's the only reason I asked you because he, when you're at the 7 or 8 yard, what was it, a 7 or 8 yard run, something like that, that would be a fade ball or a back shoulder if you have press man, that would trigger up the pass.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know the specific
certainly
answer.
by the way,
from the
ball
condensed copy that I've seen and also the broadcast copy, to me it was a run the entire time.
And it may well have been. I'm just. I don't know.
I mean, the ball was snapped. He ran immediately. So
you might be able to find that out. Talking to. I'd love to know that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd love to know that.
I'm gonna look at that tape and I'll give you a tape. I'll look at that tape.
Yeah.
You'll get it.
All right. Real quick before we head into our next read, I just from a Packers standpoint, have they played a team yet this year that has a mobile quarterback? So the Bears with Justin Fields, but have they played them yet? Is that tape you've watched?
You have to give me the schedule. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember if they played.
I can't remember all 11 games.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering, defensively, what do you expect? Do you expect the Packers to play more man because of the Colts doing it last week? Or what do the Packers do foundationally?
Yeah, so the Packers had to play a different game plan last week.
Right.
Because they were trying their best to stop Derrick Henry. So they played with the stack box, 8-man box, pretty much the entire game. Right. So you saw that trigger into cover 3 and cover 1. However, when you have a Jaire Alexander and you have Stokes and you have Amos and you have these guys, you can play man-to-man as much as you would like and be fine.
Now remember, they won't have Stokes tonight, but
they won't have him tonight. I'm just saying, just historically, their defense. What was the cornerback's name that was here with us, that was playing slot for them?
Chandon Sullivan.
Chandon Sullivan.
He's a slot for Minnesota now. He plays literally every snap.
Every snap.
Yeah.
So, so I remember him playing playing inside a lot, which would mean some cover 2 and cover 4, but also some cover 3 in early downs.
Okay.
That's what it was a year or two ago when
Right.
Shannon Sullivan was in there.
Greg, any kind of expectations of whether they're more
the big
head man or
question
zone?
is, will they play a lot of man for a number of reasons? Number one, will Savage be the slot corner? Because then, see, the Eagles do move their receivers around. You could get Smith in the slot, you could get Brown in the slot.
Right.
You know, I don't know if you're comfortable with Savage matched up man-to-man. And the other factor is what I said earlier, the run game. Because if you're going to play man and you run potential run defenders off, that creates a lot of space in the run game.
Sure.
You lose run support players. And some of them are primary run support players.
Right.
So I don't know if they'll play a lot of man.
All right.
I mean, everybody plays man. No one goes through a game and plays no man, but you're asking, will they do it as a significant feature of their coverage concept? My guess would be no.
Man is not a winning defense versus the Eagles.
Right.
It just isn't. When Jalen Hurts can, like you said, run the ball, you have A.J. Brown that gets paid to beat man coverage, especially with the corners that they have, especially
Smith
with a backup. When you got
Sure.
Rasul Douglas, you expect Rasul Douglas to run with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown the entire game? You just can't.
Got to get
Now
go
you can
after
play
him. Yep.
too deep, man, to protect those guys,
You
but
can,
then you are
but you're not
very
going
loose
to play
against
that
the
on
run.
first down against the
No,
Eagles.
not again.
And that's probably the
That's
easiest.
a 3rd and 9 call.
Right.
And that's probably the easiest defense to run against 22-man from the quarterback position.
Right.
Sure.
It's probably the easiest one to run against because now you don't have to worry about guys blitzing as much.
But you also then have to worry if you're going to play that, let's say on 3rd down, you have to worry about Hurts running. Who's going to take care of Hurts?
Right.
Unless you want to rush 3 and play a spy,
Yeah.
which, I don't
Gotcha.
think they would do that. But
All right, please check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Really quickly, I want to go back to what we were talking about in the trenches. The Packers do have some guys that normally give you a little fear, and the Eagles have a very good offensive line. So guys like Kenny Clark, Jerron Reed, are they stout run stuffers? Are they good pass rushers? They do both?
well, as individuals, yes, you would say that.
Okay.
Kenny Clark's a really good player.
Yeah.
And I think he's had a good year. I think in the run game, you look at the other guys inside, as we discussed earlier, and say they're good players, but it hasn't always translated.
Sure.
The question now is their pass rush, because they've got Preston Smith as one edge player, and he's a pretty good pass rusher. He's long, he's athletic, but they're playing a lot the rookie from South Carolina, Enoch Barry, and Garvin. Enoch Barry's played a lot of snaps, and I watched him coming out of South Carolina. He's not a bender, he's not loose, he's much more of a power type player.
Right.
And I think the Eagles handle those kinds of rushers pretty well.
Isn't it interesting how little we have talked this year about Isaac Seumalo and Landon Dickerson? Just in general, I mean, we don't mention their names.
Yep.
And usually for an offensive lineman, that's a good thing. What kind of feedback are you getting from people who just on the interior of the
Good for
offensive line?
Seumalo. Dickerson's had his moments where he hasn't been quite as good maybe as the other game. Still very good. He's still getting there.
Yeah.
They're really good. Look, we know that Mailata's had some snaps here or there. Last few games that could have been better.
Right.
We always have to remember, people forget, man, never played football in his life. First 2 years didn't really play. This is, his 3rd year as a starter.
Yeah.
And he just continues to get better. They're really going to be good, and they have good depth in the offensive line for now. We'll see what happens next year when some of these guys leave. Particularly, Seumalo's contract's up, so they have to see what they want to do there. And when you really look at their situation right now, they have really good depth that's been tested. They sit pretty well here. I think you look at the roster, other than the 3 guys who are on IR, but they obviously alleviated that issue at D tackle.
Sure.
Because the 2 guys that they signed, they're in pretty good shape here.
Greg Dickerson, Landon Dickerson. More of a run
I think
grader now
that's
than a
what he's at
pass
his
protector?
best. I think that he'll get better as a pass protector, but he's a big man now.
Yeah.
And I think he's at his best as a run blocker for sure.
Sure. Okay. Good stuff.
You asked the question of, I want to go back just a second.
Yeah.
Just on the sheer number of bodies that they thought that they needed to stop the run versus the Titans lets me know that the defensive coordinator doesn't think that they have enough to stop the run with 7 or 6.
Just playing in nickel like a lot of teams do. Yeah.
They committed everyone. So Ryan Tannehill looked like Aaron Rodgers this past game because the boxes were overcrowded and they had a lot of one-on-ones on the outside. You know, so that lets me know that the defense coordinator doesn't think that they can stop the run without adding extra people to the line.
So perhaps a good night tonight for guys like Devontae and A.J. Brown to see some single coverage.
If they deem the Eagles' run game worthy.
Right. Now, the Eagles don't come out running
well,
the way
the Eagles
Titans
also have better
do.
receivers than the Titans.
Yeah.
So they may be more concerned about the
Eagles.
Titans. I don't think you go in concerned that they're necessarily, and I know Tannehill did throw for over 300, but I don't think you go into the game thinking that we better stop this pass game or else.
Yeah.
Right.
The Eagles put out there Brown and Smith, high-level receivers, and Watkins who can run. So, we'll see. It might be different. And again, I am really curious to see if Savage is still the slot corner after 10 days.
Yeah.
I'm really curious.
Did he not look comfortable?
No.
Yeah. So you're telling
want to
us.
think about that answer
No,
for a second?
but you definitely are going to isolate him.
Yeah, and he may be the guy because you know what? At this time of the season, it's either someone down on your roster who you don't believe should be playing, or you're going with a street free agent. So, they may be stuck. It may be Savage again, and you live with it.
And if you play zone, you don't have to worry about it as much.
Right.
But if you're forced to play man, you're in trouble.
Because Savage is used, if you're going to play zone, he's either going to be a hook to curl defender or a flat defender. He's used to doing both those things as a safety. So that he's more comfortable with. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, listen. From a content creation standpoint, people ask us all the time, how do you do it? We say, we got the content, but it's the people who make the content look great. The people who make Inside the Birds Pregame Live come to life is our team of Public Square and Rebel Hill. It's James and Zach. They're always behind the controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. If you contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions, they'll produce your webcast, podcast, live show, anything you can dream of. This team brings it to life. That's Public Square and Rebel Hill, and we are eternally grateful for the work that James and Zach do. So we thank them, and we encourage everybody to check them out. I want to flip the discussion we were just having real quickly on the Packers offensive line versus the Eagles defensive front. David Bakhtiari, we'll find out if he's going to be active and play tonight. He should go. He's just been dealing with injuries. Big game for edge rushers, guys like Hassan Reddick or Josh Sweat, you feel?
Should it be? Again, guys can win and not necessarily get sacks because, Rodgers is obviously a savvy guy. He's going to be aware of that.
Right.
Bakhtiari's not there. He's going to know. I remember Ron Jaworski telling me a great story about how Vermeil would talk to just him on a Saturday night before a game and say to him, hey, look, Ron, Stan, meaning Stan Walters, Stan's going to have a problem this week blocking so-and-so. You got to be aware of that. And he wouldn't tell Stan that, or he wouldn't say it to the team, but he would tell Jaws that, hey, you got to be aware that you could have a problem on third down because, we're not going to give him help, and he may have a problem.
Right.
So, Rodgers is going to be aware of those kinds of things. Now, that doesn't mean that Sweat or Reddick won't have great pass rushes and maybe get a sack or two, but Rodgers is going to be aware of that if Bakhtiari can't go.
Sure.
Usually guys like Aaron Rodgers, it's hard to sack him, but our defensive line is so up and down when it comes to pressure. That's the one area I just don't get consistently. I don't get. They're up and down when it comes to pressure. So I wouldn't know. I don't understand why it's like this.
Reddick's been quiet lately. Cox, as we discussed, has been up and down.
I think Sweat's played well, though.
Sweaty's been good. No, he's actually been. Are they playing any wide nine, by the way? A little bit.
Sure.
A nickel.
Oh, yeah, everybody does that when you get to your sub
Third down.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I would throw in there that, the last two opponents, they're either running the ball heavily or they're really trying to get the ball out quickly.
Yeah.
There's not many teams trying to take 7-step drops against the
No.
Eagles the last 2 or
No,
3
and
weeks, so that's hard to get to the quarterback when they're not doing it.
Without question.
Yeah. All right. Let us talk, as we always do around this time, about the sports stock market. I know it's your favorite subject.
Stock market
Greg
of
goes
sports.
It's time to check the scores.
Mojo is building the sports stock market where you can invest in your favorite players. You invest in what you know. We know sports. We know pass catchers and running backs and tight ends. I don't know anything about Fortune 500 companies. That's why I don't play the stock market, but I do play the sports stock market that Mojo gives us. The shares entitle you to a guaranteed payout, and it's based on career-ending stats. You can build a nice, diverse portfolio of NFL players, talent players, and you can follow them for the rest of your career, making money as they have their meteoric rise from rookie all the way up. So you can cash out any time on Mojo, and it's not just the season, it's the off-season as well. Anything can happen in the off-season. Trades, injuries, things that happen can in fact impact your Mojo share value. That's how it works. Over 300 NFL skill position players, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. And so Mojo is available in New Jersey on iOS. Just by downloading the app, you get a chance to win up to $10,000 in free shares of player stock. You can click the link in description in the description box of this video when it's on YouTube for a chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. You got to be 21 and physically located in New Jersey to trade on Mojo. You have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Adam, let's take a look at some Eagles this week that you might want to be getting in on Mojo. We talk about Quez Watkins. You saw he had a touchdown, dropped a touchdown 2 weeks ago. He was going into this week, he's up 0.87, which isn't a lot, but there's going to be some opportunities for him to raise that value.
I just feel like they haven't really done it, so I don't know if they'll do it, but maybe Gainwell, this could be a Gainwell game. They got to get some more explosive plays downfield, and I get the Colts have a very good defense, we all knew that, but they got to find somebody else to do it, and Gainwell could be that guy, because you need to find somebody else than the other two big guys with Goedert out, and Gainwell, as Greg outlined very well, I know it was only 1 year, but he was phenomenal in 2019 in Memphis.
Right.
So let's see if someone else make a play.
Well, I tell you, if you're a buy low type of guy, all right, Kenneth Gainwell is down 3.76%. It's not even about production anymore. He had 1 carry last week, so he's not even being used in this offense. However, every week, sometimes we see a surprise. So maybe Kenneth Gainwell will have a week, and this might be the week to just buy him at a low price and see if it doesn't go. Remember, this is career-ending stats that everything's based on, and remember that Miles Sanders is going to be a free agent after this year. So it's not guaranteed he'll be back with the Eagles, and they may be looking for somebody to be their next running back next year.
Remember our last show, I said, with Leonard Fournette's injury, before they ruled him out, I said, on Wednesday, get shares of Rachaad White now. Now's the time to buy in. He had a huge game against Cleveland earlier, their overtime game. So yeah, you want to get in on these guys because, by the way, he's going to be the guy of the future. He's going to be the running back of the future. He will be the guy next year for sure. Tampa Bay.
Who's that?
Rachaad White.
Rachaad White. And speaking of injuries, by the way, with Dallas Goedert, he didn't do anything wrong. All he did was get hurt, but he's down 0.01% because he's hurt and doesn't play, and he's been hurt at times in his career. So I don't know, maybe you wait 2 or 3 more weeks, let it keep going down, then rebuy on Dallas Goedert.
Sure.
All right, good stuff on Mojo. Remember, you got to be available. You have to be in New Jersey to download to trade on Mojo. It's available on iOS, and just by downloading the app, you'll get a chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Good stuff there. All right, you guys ready to get into our player to watch segment? Now, our player to watch segment is brought to you by Game Time Watches. They are the leader in licensed sports watches. So get your favorite NHL, NFL, or MLB team logo watch now at GameTimeWatch.com. Now, Eagles fans, Game Time Watches is partnered with Inside the Birds, and they're offering a special promo code to get 20% off. You use the promo code ITB20. That's ITB20 to get 20% off GameTimeWatch.com. That code applies not just for Eagles watches, not just for NFL watches, but anything not already discounted. There's plenty of styles to choose from for men, women, and kids. Of course, you've got the men's varsity style watches. They got the shiny face, the big team color logo, metallic accents, metal case, and the thick black silicone strap to make it an everyday style watch. Check out the Varsity Drip Art Edition too at GameTimeWatch.com. All right, Jason, who is going to be your game time watch player to watch for tonight's game?
I think this is my second week in a row with Miles Sanders.
Well, I hope you do better this week than you did last week.
Yeah. So I think this may be my second week. I think the Packers are 24th. Yes, they're 24th against the rush.
Yeah.
So I believe this is a game we should be able to run the football, especially when you add in the Jalen Hurts emergence of running as a threat, and our receivers should dictate that Miles Sanders gets the ball a bunch.
Yeah, real quick, the inactives for the Eagles: Ian Book, Josh Jobe, who was healthy enough to play, but he's inactive. Trey Sermon, of course, Josh Sills again, and Suapeta again.
All right, so no major inactives there, and we'll check for the Green Bay ones in a second. Greg, who is your game time watch player to watch?
I don't have a real reason for why I think the Eagles' offense is just a little static right now. So I think it's going to be a Jalen Hurts. If they're going to win, I think it's going to have to be a Jalen Hurts game again. And, you know, the winning time element really struck me last week, and I think he's that kind of player. So I picked Jalen Hurts.
All right, well, that makes sense. And he obviously gave a nice fourth quarter comeback for the Eagles last week. Adam, who is your game time watch player to watch?
Because you can run the ball on the Packers, I'm going to go with number 26 in your program, Miles Sanders.
Oh, 2 Miles Sanders today. All right.
Last time we were right. Last time
he picked Miles Sanders, right? He was right?
No,
do you know what game it was?
Last time we picked the same
Who
player.
was? Do you know the game?
Oh, that's right. Who was it?
It had to be a really good matchup.
Yeah, I think it was the Steelers game.
I think it was Goedert.
And you both picked Goedert.
Okay.
Maybe it was Texans.
Well, I thought Goedert because of the zone, because of cover 2, so I don't know. But I like this matchup. This is a game where I think I just have the feeling they're going to run the ball out tonight. We'll see if I'm right.
All right, well, for all the reasons that we talked about earlier in this game, from a Green Bay standpoint, heavy reliance on the run, Aaron Jones' ability to both be an effective runner and effective receiver, and just the fact that this is the type of player that the Eagles have struggled against, a running back who can run and catch, I'm looking at Aaron Jones tonight as my game time watches player to watch.
Wow.
I will remind you, last week I said Paris Campbell was the player to watch, even though I predicted the Eagles to win.
Okay.
Paris Campbell I said he was going to have a 6 for 67 game. I think he had, 5 for 67? I was almost dead correct on the
What are you looking for Jones
stats.
tonight?
Don't
then?
break your arm patting yourself on the back.
I always do. I always do.
He does, so be careful. No, but
I could see Jones have about 85 to 90 rushing yards and about 40, 45 receiving yards.
Bakhtiari is active tonight for the
He is
Packers.
active for the Packers. All right, sounds great. All right, let's take, before we go to our predictions, we'll take one last look at the line. I don't believe it's moved much. The Eagles are still 6.5-point favorites, and the total is 46.5 when you place your bets at the Rivers Casino Sportsbook here or on the Bet Rivers app. Jason, who's winning this game?
The Birds, 24-20.
All right, Birds win 24-20. They don't cover. They don't cover, and you're going lower than the total.
Yes.
All right.
I know I picked the Birds, but I can't remember.
I got to remind you.
20 to 17.
2017.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Birds do not cover, but they win, and it is below the 46.5. This is very interesting, the totals, by the way, in our picks. Adam, who wins tonight?
It looks like the rain has stopped at the link, and I've got a 20 to 16 Eagles.
You and Greg almost locked up there. Again, Eagles don't cover, and it's a low-scoring game. I have the Packers winning 26-20. So I am right at the over-under at 46 right there. I'd be a little bit under, but I have the Packers covering because they win outright.
I would not look at your social media stuff tonight.
I always,
especially if you're right, they will not be happy with you.
Listen, do you guys think that they're going 16-1? I'm just curious.
No, I just think that the Packers, the way that they're playing now, I don't think that the Packers are the team to
that's
beat
fine.
them.
My point is you'll probably wind up picking the Eagles to lose at some point again this year.
Mine would probably be next week if there's any more.
It just comes down to me, injuries with them.
Injuries.
When they get Goedert back, this is a roster where you look at them and you go, do they really have do the Eagles, when they're all healthy guys, do they have a weekness on personnel?
You mean a true weakness
Yeah.
where you go, wow, that's a major weakness?
Or an issue?
Special teams, that's about it.
But just the starting 22.
Probably not a major weakness.
Jay?
No, you can point to areas, but not as a position group.
And that's why they're the best team, I think. Although Kansas City right now is just playing better than the Eagles, but it's the Chiefs and Eagles are right now the two best teams.
There you go.
Yeah, like you can point to areas like third down defense. Yeah.
Is it
It's not
just
like
me,
that.
by the way, who's thought of some really cool developing storylines for a Super Bowl, like maybe the Eagles, Chiefs, and Andy Reid versus his old team, or Jalen Hurts versus Tua Tagovailoa?
Oh my gosh, that would be
I
crazy.
stay up at night thinking about this.
Or
stuff.
Sean McDermott and the Bills
Sean McDermott?
versus the Eagles. Yeah, a lot of good
How
stuff.
about that?
Yep, for
I
sure.
can't get these guys
We
excited
got a
about
long ways
anything.
to go
All right,
before
we got
that.
a long way to go. Make sure you check out all the coverage of the game on InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew Checo will have observations. We'll have the Inside the Birds live post-game show. Adam Caplan, myself, Trey Thomas, and everything that will, of course, be on YouTube and our socials. I want to thank everybody for helping the show. Rivers, Game Time Watches, Mojo, Sky Motor Cars, the team at Rebel Hill and Public Square. For Jason Avant and Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Birds Pregame Live. Enjoy the game, everybody. Go Birds. Stay out of my atmosphere.
Mosher's a traitor.